Hello and welcome back to the SaaS Marketing Weekly podcast with me, your host Ryan, the founder of Rocket SaaS. And today I'm back in the studio with Sam, the Rocket SaaS head of content. Hello.
Hello, nice to be back.
Welcome back. Episode number 4.
Here we go. It's getting serious.
Yes, one of our most popular guests. Episodes with Sam always get a lot of listens. I think because there's a lot of content marketers out there. There's a lot of people that care about content marketing. And Sam is a content legend in the B2B SaaS game and now marketing agency game. So today we're talking about top of funnel content and the importance of top of funnel content. I'm a huge lover of top of funnel content. Rocket SaaS is scaling rapidly. We've scaled from 1 to 7 million ARR in the last sort of 2 years or so. And if you were to ask me, like, what is the main reason for that? There's obviously lots of reasons, but really the top of the funnel, some of you may find that surprising, is I would say possibly the most important factor. I think if we did what most businesses do, which is heavy focus on the bottom of the funnel, a little bit in the middle and not a lot at the top, we would be absolutely nowhere near where we are today in terms of growth. So huge believer in the importance of the top of the funnel. Yes, you have to wait for the sales cycle to come through if they're at the top of the funnel, but that's what demand generation is all about. If you've listened to this podcast regularly, you've heard me bang on about demand generation marketing a lot. You should know by now, but I'm going to give you a quick overview of it. It's all about the 95% and the 5%. 5% of your target audience are in market ready to buy right now. That's the bottom of the funnel. So if you're only doing bottom of the funnel, you're only marketing to about 5% of your audience. 95% of your audience, they could buy from you at some point, but they're not in market now. They haven't got the budget, they haven't got the pain point bad enough, their boss says no, they're not in market right now. But they could go in market next month, next year, could be 2 years. So you want to market to those people so when they do go in market, because they get the budget, the boss says yes, or whatever happens in the business that they're ready, they already know you, like you, trust you, and they know exactly who they want to speak to, you. So to create content for that 95% of people, that's essentially top of the funnel. A lot of people say that demand generation is just nonsense and it's just like top of funnel, which I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it's just a great way of like articulating it and like the philosophy of it. So the importance of top of funnel content is tricky for a lot of businesses because they don't know what top of funnel that they should be creating. Sometimes, like I've been guilty of this before, you end up creating top of the funnel content that is just too far left field of what you actually do. Like back in the day, Rocket SaaS used to create top of funnel content about like how your SaaS business can raise funding. Because I thought all of my clients want to raise funding because everyone in B2B SaaS wants to raise funding. So I'll create content about how to do an investment deck and like how to reach out to investors. And then I realized it just wasn't working because Rocket SaaS don't get involved in investments and investors, and we don't design investment decks for people. So it was just a bit not quite there. It was along the right lines. So it's a bit of it's a broad area, the top of the funnel, hence why it's the widest part of the funnel. So you can easily get it wrong. So my man Sam is going to help us today by figuring out what should you work on at the top of the funnel. There's obviously various different topics and there's various different content formats you can do at the top of the funnel. So, and then also that you got to then nurture and retarget people to the middle and the bottom of the funnel. So let's get into that then. Sam, where do you want to start?
So basically it all starts with your ICP. If you don't know your ICP, then you are not going to be able to make top of funnel content because you don't know what your target audience actually want. And I know that you feel really strongly about that.
I do, yes. So, you have to be narrow on your ICP because top of funnel content is mainly helping people solve their problems. So if you don't know who your ICP is, what their job titles are, what their company headcount is, then you don't really know what their problems are, so you can't create content about that. So that's where it starts. And I don't want this episode to be completely about who is your ICP or like how to find your ICP. But if that is a problem for you, then that's where you need to focus before you start creating content at the top of the funnel. So market research, analyzing your CRM, your closed lost, speaking to your customers, and maybe even making a bold decision to be like, okay, this is our ICP, as opposed to like waiting too long to try and figure it out and just getting in a mess. So sometimes creating an ICP is just making a educated but brave like risk to be like, we're going for this ICP. And then everything just kind of clicks, not just from top of funnel, but the whole of marketing clicks, the whole of sales, the offer, the website, the brand, everything just kind of clicks into place. Like when I found out my ICP of B2B SaaS companies, marketers and founders, I just was able to very quickly understand like what content that they would resonate with. So that's you really have to get tight on the ICP. And then, I'll kind of hand back to you. So let's say you've got the ICP, the size of the company, the typical headcount that you're going after. There can be obviously multiple ICPs and multiple job titles. That's completely normal, and you can obviously break them out. But let's say you've got that nailed. How would you now kind of approach what to create at the top of the funnel?
So basically, I always use the example at Cognism. So once we knew our ICP, we had a large ICP based across 3 different personas, which was sales, marketing, and RevOps. I owned the sales persona at Cognism, so that was my focus. And so with that sales persona, we had to understand, as part of identifying your ICP, what are their pain points. They need strong contact data so that they can make their calls and they can make their sales. Part of their job role is making the calls. So basically, we created top of funnel content in the form of a state of cold calling report for SDRs, AEs, all the way up to sales management to read, basically to understand exactly what they should be saying on their cold calls.
Right. So you basically identified this is the ICP, which is salespeople that work within like sales teams. And then you identified what is the main problem that these people have. And the way that I always like to think about it is like, what keeps them up at night? If I just put yourself in their shoes, imagine you were them, their job title, their like persona, you were lying in bed at night and you're thinking, I might lose my job. I might get fired if I don't solve this problem. What is keeping me up at night? And your example of like salespeople, it's like, I need to close more deals on the calls that I'm making. It's because your persona was not people that are necessarily doing loads of emails. It was mainly people that were hammering the phones. So you just narrow and narrow and narrow into their job and their problem, which is how do I get more people to respond to me on the phone to book a demo with my AE? So that's what you narrowed down, and then you started to create content to basically help them solve that problem. Is that a good way to describe it?
Exactly. No, that's absolutely perfect. So, and to bring it back to that top of funnel piece, that was how we were being discovered. The top of the funnel is so that your business and brand can be discovered via that content. So people Googling search terms like, how do I cold call better? How do I get a higher success rate? They were coming across this state of cold calling report. It was also boosted by ads, but there was a lot of an organic incoming of readers as well. And that's how they discover the brand. And if an SDR is reading the piece, they'll mention it to their sales manager, so potentially the decision maker, and they'll say, great piece from Cognism. Did you know they're also a data provider? And that's when you start moving further down the funnel.
Yeah, and did you start to gate stuff? So that report, for example, was that gated or was that completely ungated?
Well, yeah, we can delve into this. It's because Cognism was a large company. We had a tool called Dream Data, which is where we could basically understand every specific content piece. So with the URL of that content piece led to how much pipeline, and that is because Dream Data knew when a deal crossed the line, whether that prospect, which was now a customer, had actually touched on that content before. So there was no need at Cognism for gated content. But if you're a smaller business, I would highly recommend adding maybe a gated asset within the top of funnel content. I'm not personally an advocate of gating top of funnel content because by gating it, you're immediately bringing it down to BOFU. You're immediately bringing it down to the bottom of the funnel. They have to give you something. Top of funnel is about you giving them something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree with that. So you created, it sounds like, I think you're going to get onto this next, aren't you, is what you would call a big rock campaign. So your state of cold calling report. So what was that, like a PDF that was like, what, 20 pages, something like that?
Yeah. So that was what we at Cognism called a big rock campaign. Okay. So.
And how often do you do them?
Once every 3 to 6 months. We ideally got one out once a quarter.
Okay.
So, a few months' work would go into them. They were large pieces of content, and that's because of the amount of research that would go into them. So I was creating this top of funnel content piece. I had to speak to our internal sales team. I had to pull loads of Salesforce data, Gong data. I also interviewed external sales agencies for an external look. So it was basically to say, here's Cognizant's data, but then also here's the industry data as well. If we were just pushing our own data, it was already moving slightly further down the funnel. It's like, oh, Cognizant this, Cognizant that. That's not what it's about. It's purely an educational piece.
Okay, so a bit of market research, maybe you didn't in this example, but getting other guest people to kind of edit and like well-known kind of influencers to input onto the research piece often works well. So that's like the one like central piece, and then I'm presuming it was repurposed into multiple short form LinkedIn posts and video clips and shorter form blogs that linked back to the main piece, and it just like spider webbed out. Am I right in saying that?
Exactly. There was massive repurposing. So if you picture it as you've got this one big rock piece, this one pillar piece, we then created short form video. So we got some of our best sales names within the business. So these were from SDR level, AE, sales manager, all the way up to CRO, posting short form video content saying, which was more towards BOFU style video. So it was something along the lines of, in Cognizant's State of Cold Calling in 2026 report, we uncovered X. And then that was boosted with paid spend on LinkedIn. That was a great way to bring people into the content, hook readers into the content. So, I want to hear a little bit more about that. There was also long form video. So we basically summarized the large piece of content with a long form YouTube video. We cut that video down into shorts.
Webinars on it?
Webinars, yeah. It was more that we had in-person events talking about it. So because Cognizant were based in the Shard, it's a great location. Come on in.
Nice.
But there's definitely a piece that you can look at. And then on the other side of it, our SEO team just sent out a few blogs on it as well. So it was being paid boosted, it was being sent out on LinkedIn, it was being sent out on Meta, but then from the organic side of it as well, they were sending out blogs which then led into that content. So they were also top of funnel blogs which had CTAs within the blogs linking through to the full report.
Yeah, nice. Okay. Well, I would say with, I want to try and give examples of what to do when it's not quite so obvious and clear what the top of funnel problem would be. I mean, that Cognizant example, don't mean to diminish it, but I guess it was quite an obvious, like very clear path in terms of like, we're targeting salespeople, let's teach them how to be better at doing cold calling. Whereas a lot of SaaS companies, they're probably looking at their ICP going, well, not exactly sure there's lots of different problems that these people have. It's not obvious where I should go with this top of funnel content. So basically market research is generally the right answer to do. Polefish, winter, spelt with a Y, where you're just asking your target audience, not necessarily about your products and your pricing and the usual things that you might ask people at the bottom of the funnel to do a survey about. Purely survey them about top of funnel stuff, like what problems are you suffering from at the moment, what's keeping you up at night, what are your thoughts and fears about the industry, what kind of content would you like to consume, like asking those sorts of questions, doing market research. And if you've got a good customer base, you can be asking your customers, like, what are you caring about in the industry at the moment? What trends, what, I don't know, AI things are you looking to learn about? So basically doing market research purely focused at the top of the funnel in terms of just basically the audience telling you what content you should be creating. And then also, one of my favorite exercises is every demo that you do, every sales call that you do, in the script or in the list of questions that you ask or go through, make sure there's some top of funnel questions in there. Like just out of interest, like all the stuff I just said basically. And then you use AI to transcribe those calls, and then when you've done a load of calls, you can pump it into one big LLM. You're like, okay, what are the most common themes that people are saying here? And that basically tells you what top of funnel content to create. So that's a really good exercise that I recommend that you do, because otherwise you're just kind of going to be guessing like what content you should be creating, whereas you really need the audience to be telling you this. But yeah, any other tips around that?
To be honest, everything you've just said is absolutely perfect. And if you're in a position where you've got that data, you've got the call data, you've got all of the FAQs, you've got all of this, AI's run you through it and said, this is what your audience is saying. The best way that I can express to simplify it down is to decide, okay, we've got all of this. What do we want to be known for? And how can it tie back to our actual offering? So that's what we did at Cognizant. And again, you can use this in any business. Let's say you're an HR platform. What do we want to be known for? Our HR tool. How can we bring the topic that we want to be known for? We want to be known for great HR. how do we bring the topic that we want to be known for back to our actual offering? Remember, it's top of funnel. Do not push your product in top of funnel.
Yeah, nice. Love it. And then also, we haven't even talked about the podcast yet. So, I know it's a heavy lift for a lot of businesses, but the best thing I ever did at the top of the funnel was to start this very podcast. We are over episode 100 now, so we've been doing it for 2 years, and it's easily been arguably the best investment we've ever made. Every single episode, I seem to just talk about something else that's the best investment I ever made, but the podcast is definitely up there in terms of so many different benefits the podcast brings, but the biggest benefit is the top of the funnel. You just naturally have conversations about the top of the funnel. I don't think we do any episodes where we're like, oh, this is an episode about us and Rocket SaaS and how great we are. We slip it in there, but it's generally about purely the top of the funnel. And when you've got two thought leaders sat opposite each other, or I do lots of solo episodes on my own, just like giving a thought leadership tip, that just it almost naturally creates top of funnel when you do a podcast like this. It's a bit like let me try and use this analogy. It's a little bit like running to work. Okay, so if you want to get fit and healthy, you can go to the gym like every day, which is just like a faff. You've got to kind of go out of your way to go to the gym, or you can kind of kill two birds with one stone. You can just run to the office and back every day. So you're kind of getting fit on autopilot kind of thing. And I kind of think of a podcast like that. Like I come to the studio, have a nice chat with Sam or someone, and it feels natural. It's something that I'm passionate in. You're passionate about content. I'm passionate about marketing and business growth. So it's just like a normal conversation that me and you might have at the pub. Other people listening might find it boring at the pub, but anyway, you get the point. We're passionate about it. We enjoy doing it, and then magically at the same time, it means that we create a load of top of funnel content that our audience really care about. And then the repurposing that happens from this podcast is incredible. I've talked about that many times on the pod. This very podcast will be turned into blog, email newsletter, multiple LinkedIn clips, short form video posts, long form video posts. The podcast itself goes out on multiple platforms. The other subject matter experts in the business listen to the podcast, get the transcript, they post about it. That happens every week. So every week we're just pumping out an absolute ton of thought leadership content. And it just really widens the reach that Rocket SaaS has and all of our content and our expertise. And it just makes people realize that we know what we're talking about. And when they're looking for a marketing agency, they're like, well, those guys that I've learned a lot from and they've really helped me solve my problems, I want to work with them. So, there's hopefully thousands, eking towards tens of thousands of marketers or founders of SaaS companies that have listened to this podcast or consumed our top of funnel content in some way, shape or form, and we've helped them solve a problem. We've helped them scale their business, or they've implemented a tip or a strategy or a campaign or a LinkedIn thing, and it's helped them get better at the job. It's prevented them from getting the sack. They've become a better marketer. And they'll remember that. They'll remember where they learned it from. So when they move to their next job and they have the budget to bring in an agency, they'll know exactly who to come to. So that whole demand generation thing, the whole top of the funnel is absolutely incredible for like having a really wide top of funnel. And when you've got really wide top of funnel, there's going to be a lot of people that make their way to the bottom. So huge fan of top of funnel educational content.
Exactly.
So that is it. I think that's everything that we've got to say about the top of the funnel and the importance of the top of the funnel. So I know what CEOs are like sometimes. They don't love the top of the funnel because it's not immediately attributing leads to it. But really, that is how you scale a business fast. You have to have a lot of really strong top of funnel content. So good luck getting stuck into it. Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm sure we will have you back for your 5th episode. So stay tuned and I'll see you soon on the SaaS Marketing Weekly podcast.